Which Frenchman helped the American Revolution by printing propaganda in Canada? Hi Founder fans, Jason here. Today's founder is a man named Fleury Mesplet. Now Fleury Mesplet was a Frenchman who left his homeland and went to London, where he just happened to meet Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin saw some potential in Mesplet and sent him over to the United States, or soon-to-be United States, with a letter to the Continental Congress introducing him. The Continental Congress at the time was doing their best to recruit Canada to the American Revolution, specifically Quebec, because Quebec was French Canada, and they were French because just 13 years beforehand they were part of France until the end of the French and Indian War, of course. So they thought, hey, why don't these Frenchmen, they probably don't want to be British, do they? They'd probably like to start a revolution with us. So they sent a letter over to Quebec saying, hey, come join us. Now this first letter, of which there would be three, but this first letter to the inhabitants of Quebec was printed by none other than Fleury Mesplet. Additionally, the Continental Congress decided to send a delegation to Quebec to try and personally ask them to join the revolution. And at this point, Benjamin Franklin had returned to North America, and he was part of it. Samuel Chase, a future Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Charles Carroll of Carrollton, who was the longest living signer of the Declaration, and John Carroll, his cousin, who would go on to be the first Archbishop in the United States. Now, the Carrolls were very important because they were Catholic, and French Canada was also very, very Catholic. And so this delegation was going to go and say, hey, come on, let's join us in the fight. And what they did is, before they left, they actually hired Fleury Mesplet to go to Montreal and open up a print shop to print propaganda in favor of the American Revolution. And he actually left before the delegation with a team of 6 people to move the 5 wagons and a whole print shop and go set up camp. At this point, the revolutionaries had invaded Canada and made their way up to Quebec City. But Mesplet went to Montreal, and by the time the delegation arrived, Mesplet had set up his print shop and begun printing pro-revolutionary, pro-republican propaganda. Now, unfortunately, the Continental Army was in retreat at this point and running away, so the delegation left, but Mesplet really liked being the first printer in Montreal. That should be noted. He was the first person to ever set up a print shop in Montreal, which is a very important Canadian city today. Now, he did not want to leave. First of all, he had a monopoly on print shops, and that's a nice thing. And additionally, he was in a place that spoke his native tongue, and he really seemed to appreciate that. So, when the Americans left, he stayed. He was arrested for about a month, and then went back to his print shop when the British came through, and kept printing anti-British propaganda, and ended up going to prison for about 3 years. Eventually, he was released, and he decided to stay in Montreal, and he remained in Montreal for the rest of his life. Actually, he started a newspaper called the Montreal Gazette, and here we are, 230-something years later, and the Montreal Gazette is still in publication. It's one of the oldest continuously published papers in North America. So that's Fleury Mesplet, the Frenchman who helped found the American Revolution and then kind of helped found Canada. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you are inspired to go look up a little bit more about Fleury Mesplet. He's a really interesting character. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, and if you're new here, hit subscribe, because I put out videos like this 5 days a week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with another Founder tomorrow.